This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast where we revisit sci-fi, fantasy, and just plain weird shows.
This week, Planet of the Apes, episodes 1 and 2.
Those were apes, weren't they? Gorillas. What kind of planet is this?
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast about damn dirty apes. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
Do they say damn dirty apes in this?
Not so far, but I'm hoping.
You know, I have to say, I wasn't sure what to think about this show, and obviously we have a little ways to go for a lot of episodes, but based on this time period and the kind of content it was, based on other shows we've watched around this time, I think this is much better.
Well, we can get into it, but I think I'm going to agree.
Yeah, because if you compare this to, what else did we see around this time period?
Well, Planet Earth is 6 months before this.
And Planet Earth is way worse than this.
Oh, it's unbelievable, because we'd watched a few 70s TV movies.
Yeah.
Things that didn't work, and I had in my head gotten used to it. It's like, oh, this is just the quality of writing back then.
That's exactly my thought. It's almost a somewhat uneducated view of just going, I've seen a few things from the 70s. They're just badly written. It's like, well, no, they don't have to be. They don't have to be bad. Like, all of your world building doesn't have to be done through the radio. You know?
Someone doesn't have to call into a radio show.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about this. So we're watching Planet of the Apes, 1974. Ran from September 13th to December 20th.
And now, which show did this replace? Was this Planet Earth?
I can't remember. For some reason, I thought we had thought it was the one before it, Genesis 2, but it must have been Planet Earth because they're like, it was out in March of 74, and this came out in September, so they must have been.
Either way, this boned Roddenberry in one way or another.
It did. I mean, considering the difference in quality, yeah, deservedly so. Did you know anything about, like, what do you know about Planet of the Apes in general?
We'd had a conversation, I think it was last week, you and I were talking off the air. And
imagine what you're not hearing.
I know, exactly, the excitement. We're still just having this conversation. It's just like this, but without microphones. But I feel a little silly because I didn't realize how big Planet of the Apes is. Or was. I mean, obviously there's been a whole whack of movies. And I just thought it was one of those things where it's a property that was available, so people keep using it. But from the little research I've done so far, there's a very strong fan base, and there's been a very strong fan base for a long time, and it's a world that I initially wouldn't have thought lent itself to so much, and just such a large, like, so many.
It seems like a one-note joke.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way of saying it. It just seems like, yeah, it's imagine if monkeys ruled, but it's apparently much more deep than that.
Certainly going on, I think there's 6 or 7 original movies. They did a remake. Then they've done this new 3 trilogy. The remake with Marky Mark. What
did
have you seen?
the Funky Bunch come out for that? One of those?
Yeah, they were all monkeys. So you couldn't tell. What of those movies have you seen?
I've seen any of them.
You've never seen any of them? Not even the Heston one?
I have seen part. Well, you know what it was? It's one of those things where it's so just part of the cultural zeitgeist, I guess you would call it, where you just know about it. I know the ending, and it has the Statue of Liberty, and what did you do, you apes, or whatever he says. And so I've seen pieces of it, but I've never actually sat and watched them, which is maybe embarrassing. Maybe I should have seen them all. How many have you seen?
Well, I've seen the Heston one for sure. I've seen the Marky Mark, Edward Scissorhands director, what's his name?
Tim
Burton remake.
Yeah.
I've seen Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the first one, and the second one, which I'm not going to remember the title of.
Oh, you've seen a lot more than me.
And I will at some point watch War for the Planet of the Apes, the last new one. But
how happy were you when they kept saying Dr. Zaius? Didn't it remind you of the Simpsons musical, the Planet of the Apes musical?
I kept singing Dr. Zaius.
Yeah, exactly.
Except he's Councilman Zaius now.
Is that what he is?
Or Counselor Zaius.
I thought they did say he was a doctor.
I think they mentioned he is a doctor, but I believe because this isn't continuity-wise related to the original movie, I think he's rose amongst ape society, and he's now a counselor on the High Council.
Oh, so we'll have to talk about that because I wasn't sure what the continuity is because they do mention previous people having been on the planet.
Yeah, I mean, let's keep going. We'll
kind
of get into it as we go. Obviously, neither of us really knew anything about this series.
Kaveh's going to be so irritated at us when he listens to this.
I mean, that's going to be our guest next week. He's a bit of a Planet of the Apes historian. He's going to be our expert who comes on anyway.
Yeah, I think he's going to be really irritated listening to us fumble our way through this.
Well, on the plus side, he probably won't listen.
That's true.
I'm going to give, as I like to do, a little world history before we go into the show. It's kind of what was happening while Planet of the Apes was on.
Mm-hmm.
October 30th, 1974. The Rumble in the Jungle.
Oh, yeah.
Ali fought Foreman. And then this is a fun one, kind of science-y, science fiction-y. November 16th, there was this broadcast called I'm not sure, we'll see if you've heard of this. The Arecibo message was broadcast. It's a radio broadcast out to great globular star cluster in the Hercules system. And it sort of was full of like information about humans.
Oh, right. And they have, I think there's, correct me if I'm wrong, the piece of music that it plays is Johann Sebastian Bach, played by Glenn Gould.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe. I
want to look that up.
From what I read, it was mostly binary information about Earth and humanity.
Oh.
And here's the point that I thought was the most fun about it, though. The message is expected to arrive at Messier 13 around the year 27,000.
Oh.
So we'll be dead.
Yeah, speak for yourself.
Well, you look that up. I'll give you two other things. These ones had dates unknown on Wikipedia, so I don't know when they happened, but they happened this year. Rubik's Cube invented.
Oh, really?
D&D published.
Oh, D&D, which... do we pull the curtain beyond our personal lives that you and I are now in a D&D group?
Well, that's why it was important to us. I don't know if the listener cares about D&D, but for the last 2 weeks, Jordan and I have cared, and probably for 2 more, and then we'll get over it.
Hey, let me jump in real quick. One of Gould's performances of the Prelude in Fugue in C major by Bach was included on the NASA Voyager Golden Record, and it was placed on a spacecraft on Voyager 1. That was...
Oh, so that's Voyager 1.
Voyager 1.
Or Vigor, if you will.
V'ger?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
If you will, Star Trek 1 me. Well, that's pretty good, though.
It was the wrong message, but I know something about piano music in space.
All right. Before I finish this off, though, you wanna see who was born during the run of Planet of the Apes?
I hope it's a supermodel like last time, because this one I might actually know.
It's not a supermodel, unfortunately. It's Jimmy Fallon.
Okay.
It's Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh, they're the same age.
It's Nelly.
Mm-hmm.
And Leo DiCaprio.
It's odd when you see people. I would never think that group of people are all the same age.
You never think those were all Planet of the Apes babies, but they are.
Yeah.
And guess who died?
Hold on, 1974.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna guess.
I'm only picking big names.
Okay, hold on. Give me a hint. Like, is it a movie star? Is it a TV star?
It's a TV star.
TV star died in 1974.
I'm gonna give you another hint if you need it, but
yeah, give me one more.
It's gonna be really on the nose, though.
Let me just guess.
Right.
I'm going to guess. We'll cut most of this out. I'm going to guess Jackie Gleason. I think he died way after that.
Oh, you're close, though. I don't know if you're close. To me, you're close. A really big show. That's your hint. That's your hint.
I don't know who that is.
Ed Sullivan.
Oh, that was Ed Sullivan? No, you're right. That was Ed Sullivan. He died in 1974.
1974 during Planet of the Apes.
during the broadcast.
Airing of Planet of the Apes. Absolutely. All right. Well, we obviously have a lot to say, so maybe we should just get into these. We haven't even started the episodes, and we've talked about a surprising amount, actually.
Yeah, and let me just say, apologies to Jackie Gleason. He died in 1987.
Oh man, he lived a long life.
71 for a large man.
Yeah, I guess it's not as long a life as I would have hoped. But.
Remember his joke was about how he was like going to smack his wife. That was the joke at the time.
Well, just like when Mikey wanted that shot last week.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
How does time work?
Yeah.
All right, here's the IMDb summary for Episode 1, Escape from Tomorrow. 2 astronauts survive a crash landing on a planet where intelligent apes rule over humans. The men find their own intelligence challenges the apes' superiority and puts their lives in danger. That was courtesy of Jay Spernlin.
J-A-Y or J period?
J period.
All right. Well, we don't know the gender of Jay. Not that it matters, but I have to start with one thing, that the opening credits for this...
Absolutely.
You go right into it. They're great.
They're fantastic.
Not only are they great, but I'm going to mention something that goes through all the show. I think the music on the show is top-notch. It's almost like film score quality.
When it kicks off, the start of these opening credits, it's such tense music with like the shots of astronauts like crash landing in a ship, and there's like a time counter going with the ship's time, which is I wrote it down, August 19th, 1980. But
it's a little bit in the future.
But the like Earth time is like spinning up forward into the future. I guess like what is it, like relativistic? How do you say that? Relativistic time travel? Like,
Yeah, that's it.
You're going through space. And
Hold on. This is for Jane. Sounds about right.
Sounds about right. Take a shot, Jane. Did you? I paused it to see what the last date on the Earth time was.
No, what was it? I didn't get it.
It was June 14th, 3085.
That's quite a bit in the future. They've
That's
gone
a little bit in the future.
Yeah.
But yeah, great opening. We kind of start off with the ship crashing. It's a little off camera, but there's like a huge crash sound, and they have a great ship that they've built to crash on the ground.
I was gonna say, I really liked. You know what? Here's what I thought the ship design looked like. It looked like the nib on a fountain pen.
Oh, that's a
Don't you
very
think so?
good. Yeah, that's a great description.
And it looked really good. Like, I mean, look, we're talking quality into this time period, right? Like, if you saw this now, you go, oh, okay. But I thought compared to the other things we've watched in this time, I was like, it looks great.
1974 on a science fiction television series, this like triangular ship. They've even like sort of tore out or at least matte painted like a crash landing zone, so you can kind of see where it tore through the forest on this way here. Like, it's a nice setup for this ship crash.
And I should say, we'll have to maybe correct this if I'm wrong, but what I read was that every episode of the show cost $250,000 in 1970 time.
Wow.
So it was a big budget.
Wow, they really went for it on this.
Yeah.
I mean, it shows. The who finds this ship after it crashes? This little ape kid, and this old man named Faro. Who do you think should have played Faro? I know.
You know what my first pick actually was Brent Spiner. Who would you think?
I thought it should have been Walter Matthau.
Oh no, that's much better. That's much better.
He had a real like Walter Matthau voice. He was like that real deep gravelly
I just
voice.
thought he looked a little bit like Brent Spiner in Independence Day. That's why.
It's true. He didn't exactly look like Walter Matthau. He just had a Walter Matthau voice.
But you bring up an interesting point. What was the little monkey kid's name?
I don't know. We never learned his name.
It does have one issue that I think will be obviously running through the entire show, which is all of the actors have problems with the prosthetics that they have to wear. They don't give them a lot of mobility. Although I have to say, Roddy McDowall really sells it and is by far the best of the apes. He does a lot of like his face is twitching and he's making little mannerisms, and I was like, oh, he's selling the not very good prosthetics that almost don't move at all when they talk.
It's tough. Like, these are the same costumes they would have used in the movies.
Yeah.
I think in the TV scale they probably had less time to properly apply them. I think overall though they're still like relatively effective. Like, this ape kid looks pretty good.
Yeah.
And I won't go into all of them as we go, but like I was looking at some of the actors playing some of the ape characters in this. Quite a few of them were actors in other ape movies. So they've at least brought in people who know how to work within that prosthetic a little bit already. And I mean, obviously no one like Roddy McDowall. We'll get to him soon, but like he's just like crushing this role.
Yeah.
Considering this is what it's like fourth or fifth time doing an ape.
Well, we'll have to talk about that more because it's odd to me that he's apparently you need to have him in every movie of Planet of the Apes and everything, but he plays a different ape every time.
I mean, you can do whatever you want.
I guess.
The kid who finds this ape kid who finds the spaceship, he runs off to report it, and the old man sticks around and sort of like pokes around the ship and finds a button that's flashing, and he pushes it.
And we should say, like, he's basically, you get the idea very early on that he's probably not the most intelligent man. He's sort of living like a peasant.
Yeah,
or
he's a hermit of some sort.
Yeah, like you get the sense that he's not, I don't know, he's not a wild guy at a party.
No, he's quite elderly.
Yeah.
He's living out there in the bush. But when he gets inside the spaceship, he finds two of the three astronauts alive. Alan Verdun, the blonde one.
Yeah.
And Pete Burke, the brown-haired one.
It's so funny that I knew it was Pete because Alan always says it, but I did not know what Alan's name is because I just didn't. I missed it the first time, and they never say his name like for episodes.
And I mean, these will obviously be our two human characters we're going to follow through. What I found very funny is like a blonde and a brown-haired guy who are right now could be interchangeable. This is just Galactic 1980.
Although these guys are much better.
Oh, these actors are selling this much better than anyone else is. It's or like they were on Galactic 80. Like they have pathos in this show.
Yeah, I agree.
The old man sort of rescues the two astronauts before the apes arrive to like get to the ship, and he like hauls them back to like his bomb shelter.
Do you remember how he opened the ship?
Well, yeah, there's a flashing button.
It was just like, I love that. I was like, yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, just flashing on the side of the thing. He's like, oh, what's this?
Yeah.
Boop. And it opens up. Even the interior of the ship looks great. It's like all
I agree.
bells and whistles and like spinning flickers and stuff.
Yeah, it looked great.
I like that he goes around and he tests to see if they're alive by putting his hand on their chests to see if their hearts are beating.
What I didn't understand, so you just mentioned he pulls them both out of safety. You only really see, I think, him pull one of them, And you're just supposed to imply that he's done it twice. But I was like, they show that he pulled him a long way.
Yeah, I think what you're supposed to get the sense of, I wasn't sure either. I was like, did he only rescue one? Did he rescue two? But I guess the apes took a while for Kid Ape to get back to town, come back, and then to arrive with the apes to find them.
Kid Ape.
I was going to say, actually, because Kid Ape goes back to the town to kind of tell them about this crash. And he talks to this ape in an eye patch, who's the prefect of the human settlement there, Chelo. That's the name of the settlement.
Is that what it was?
That's the settlement's
Chelo.
name. I really like that ape prefect, because I guess basically there's an ape prefect to look after all these little human enclaves where they're little, I don't know if they're slaves, they're
They're sort of
serfs.
they're agrarian sort of.
But I really like this guy had a one big eye patch on. He was just like going for it. He essentially, what he says, he's like, hey, we got to tell all the humans in the settlement that there's two insane humans on the loose right now. And if they see them, they got to tell us, because we can't let them know that there's humans out there who like have this kind of technology.
And that seems to be a running theme, not only through this episode, the next episode, and I'm going to assume throughout the series. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm guessing that probably goes through all the film movies as well. But this idea that if humans had a higher self-esteem or self-worth in this world, they might actually rise up. So the idea is to not even so much physically keep them down, but emotionally, mentally keep them down.
Yeah, I guess to keep them from like rising to their intellectual potential.
Right.
Yeah, I think that it seems to be a general case of what we're seeing in these episodes anyway. The prefect actually sends a message by horseback to Central City to kind of let them know, like, hey, something's going on here. You better send some people out. We'll pop back to the astronauts here who are kind of waking up in this bomb shelter home that Pharaoh lives in, and we kind of get a little sense of what happened to them. They were in an accident in their spaceship while approaching Alpha Centauri.
And they ran into some turbulence.
They were in some radioactive turbulence. I had to look it up. Do you know how far Alpha Centauri is from Earth?
Now, how far?
It's 4.367 light years.
Oh, that's far.
That's pretty far. So they're pretty advanced.
It was pretty good, though, in 1980 they were able to do that.
Yeah, they figured on the show in 6 years we'd get pretty far.
Mm-hmm.
And while they hit that turbulence, they activated an automated homing device, which is what they'll come to learn is how they ended up back on Earth.
Right.
Though we'd go through a small period here where they're like, are we on Earth? Or are we on stranded on an alien planet? They're pretty accepting of either, actually. Like, they seem to very quickly be like, well, this is where we are now.
Well, it happened pretty quick. I mean, they wake up in this cave, and old Walter Matthau comes back.
Pharaoh, yeah.
He comes back, and they it's like, oh, we're gonna attack him, and he's like, no, and they get a sense just having conversation with him that something's not right.
Yeah.
But almost immediately they're just like, well, let's just go outside.
Well, he's like, don't go outside. The apes will get you. And they're just like, the apes. Yeah, right, old man.
And it's like immediately they get attacked.
Yeah, some apes immediately ride up on them and start shooting at them.
And the guy does a great line reading there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't even know the exact line. Oh, he said, they come out and they get shot and they hide and then blah, blah, blah. The guys are chasing them. And he just like, not right to camera, but he's just with as much emotion as possible. Like he's delivering like final lines in Hamlet. He's like, what kind of planet is this? And I was like, oh, that's great. It was great.
There's some great line readings for sure. But yeah, they kind of start piecing it together now because they'll talk to Pharaoh some more and he'll show them a book with, he's like, I found these old storybooks. They're from the past or something. And like they start flipping through a picture book and they see like, what is it? Hold on, I wrote down. Like,
it was 2500, wasn't it?
Yeah, New York in like 2500 or something. There's like a photo of it in the future. And so they kind of very easily piece together like, hey, we've crash landed on a future Earth.
Now let me ask you, I got one weird question. Through this and obviously in the next episode, you'll start seeing the house structures that the apes are living in. And I guess also the humans are kind of living in. Are they supposed to be simply carved into caves, or are they actually built that way? Because sometimes it seems like caves and sometimes it seems like they just are building these round kind of...
I think it's kind of those round, like, isn't it like a New Mexican style or something, like adobo or something?
Yeah.
I'm probably saying that wrong, but like I feel like there's like a clay kind of house you can build.
Well, that's what you think. You think they've built those.
I feel like those are constructed.
Okay.
Because they're not necessarily in cliff faces usually.
But they do have that very late 60s, early 70s kind of look to them.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah,
everything kind of looks like...
Yeah,
it all kind of looks... I'm like, is this just paper mache?
Yeah, it's true. We'll jump ahead because the message arrives in Central City where Counselor Zaius, previously Dr. Zaius from the other movies, we assume, he's busy interviewing his new assistant.
And he has my favorite haircut of all the apes because he looks like he's from the band Yes. It's just this real, like, short bangs with long back. It's just such a bad haircut. Someone's got to tell Dr. Zayas to get a makeover.
I really like that the first scene with him is we're watching him just interviewing a new assistant.
Yeah, that's right.
It's very just like business usually. So you're going to be my assistant, eh, Galen? Well, what are your qualifications?
Yeah. There's no monkeying about.
There's no monkeying about. And Galen, of course, is Roddy McDowell in this role, the new role in this Apes franchise for him. They're sort of having this conversation about how he's going to be Zayas' assistant when the message arrives that a spaceship has crashed off in this little town of Chelo. And Zayas starts talking about how like this is kind of his reoccurring nightmare, that he's had to deal with this before. About 10 years ago, another astronaut crashed on the planet, which I assume is a reference to Heston, right?
That's what I had assumed, yeah.
Yeah, Charles Heston. It's got to be him from the first movie. But how great is it as he's talking and there's like a big gorilla military ape who's there, whose name I forgot written down somewhere. But he's just like, they're talking about it, and Zayas is like, what was that man called who crashed here? And they cut to the gorilla who's just like, I think I remember. Astronaut?
It's that great, I don't even know if it's a trope, but it's just that thing where you have to have one of the characters know a word, but they have to pronounce it in a really odd way for some reason, even though they can say everything else fine.
Right. They just put the spaces in the wrong parts. But essentially, basically, Zayas is sort of freaked out, like more travelers from the past coming to the future, really jeopardizes their society. So he sends Galen along with this military gorilla to, here's his name. The military gorilla's name is Urko.
Oh, Urko.
A good name. To head off to this little village to, look into what's going on. Now that they're on their way, the astronauts are kind of trying to come up with a plan because, they want to go back to the ship and sort of see what they can find from the crash. And they take some convincing, but Faro's like, sure, let's go back. And they want to check out, they've got like a flight recorder on it, like a little silver disc they want to look at. And it sort of indicates here, we'll actually see the date they crashed on. It was March 21st, 3085. A little different than the top of the show, but maybe it's because it goes farther into the future.
Yeah, maybe.
But while they're kind of like going through the ship, Faro like distracts one of the apes so they can get inside and try to like get the things they need out of it. But immediately sort of Galen and this Urko character show up and shoot Faro dead.
And they're not terribly sympathetic to him.
The apes couldn't care less.
Yeah.
Like they're like, can you please check on our friend? And Roddy McDowell's doing great. He's like looking at them like so confused. He's like, oh, sure, I'll check on your shot friend. He's like, yeah, he's dead.
Yeah.
He's very dead.
Yeah, it was a pretty good line reading.
It was really good. And it was the first sign for me that Roddy McDowell was going to be like so watchable in this because he really plays that so well.
That's a good way of saying it. He is really, really watchable. Like from the first scene, you're like, I want to watch that ape.
And it's so grateful to know. It's like, oh, we're going to.
Yeah. Let me mention one thing. Did you not laugh when they cut to the two guys in the cave and they seemingly were just naked under the blankets?
Oh yeah.
And he was like, why are we seeing like what it looked like was they just had sex. They're like, well, we're at this planet. Rules are no more rules here. And then it's just like, and I think it's just a lot of like, these are masculine men. We're gonna show you how beefcakey they are.
I mean, they look pretty good. They're beefcakey guys.
Yeah.
They're you want to see that physique? That's what we're tuning in for.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, though, what happens is because they're caught at the spaceship and Faro gets killed, they're arrested and sort of dragged off. They're going to be take them to the High Council to kind of, I don't know, be put on trial or something. But Galen's kind of looking at the dead body of Faro. Faro's brought his picture book with him on this thing, which was very funny because when we cut back from commercial break and we're seeing Faro and the astronauts head off to the spaceship, like there's just a cut in the lines like, hey, Faro, why'd you bring that book with you? Faro's like, well, I don't know, just thought I would.
Yeah. Because it's a plot point, that's why.
It felt like someone's like, we gotta explain why he took this book with him because he's been hiding it for years and he's never left his cave before. But it is basically there so Galen can find it. He kind of becomes fascinated by the implication of all these human achievements, and like even as he's flipping through, there's even a photo of like an ape in a cage that is like very disturbing.
Yeah,
to
that
him.
was my question though. What kind of book was it? Because at first, it seems like it's just a book on architecture or, I don't know, skyscapes, sky city, I don't know, whatever it is.
I think I know.
Architecture. But then it's like, here's a building. Here's an ape in a cage. And I was like, this just seems like a perfect book to point out the problems of humanity.
I think this is just like a Time Life 2503. Like,
oh, that's what it is?
Year in history sort of thing.
Year in review?
Yeah, year in review. That's what I think it is. At any rate, and he kind of like, he starts asking the astronaut prisoners some questions and like getting to know them, but he doesn't like their answers. Like basically their answers refute his like understanding of the world and kind of gets a little upset with them, but he's still quite drawn to them. There's this whole like back and forth between them. these prisoners of theirs. But we kind of get this courtroom scene with the High Council and Dr. Zaius, and the humans are basically arguing that they're equals to the apes in this scene.
Yeah.
It's not a bad scene, but it's like, this is a pilot, so I think it feels like a lot of the perfunctory.
It did feel like it was a little too early to have this scene in the series, but it was like yes, we're gonna get everything in here, and they're gonna make the argument that humans are great and you guys are sort of fascist the way you're running things,
right?
and,
or we should at least be equals. Like, it's funny. The humans do tend to take the position of like, we're not trying to kick you out. We're just like, I think you should accept that we are equals at least, though.
Yes, these the two leads are both fairly enlightened, especially compared to some of the other 70s leads we've seen. You're a great looking chick. Remember that?
Yeah, it's
but,
true.
I have to say, the one guy, Hank, who's the brown haired guy?
That'd be Pete.
Pete. He's so negative. Isn't he really negative? Like constantly.
Well, Pete's like, he's just like, we're here now. Alan's just like, I'd love to get back to my family one day. And Pete's like,
don't bother.
Just get used to it.
Well, that's what it is. Yeah, the whole time Alan's like, we need to fix things. We want to try to get home, blah, blah, blah. Like constantly. And Pete just, what's the point? I'm like, man, Pete, you're a real downer.
Pete's just happy wherever he is.
Yeah.
He's like, no, this is fine.
He's got a deep V now.
I can live with this. What I kind of like about this council scene though is basically Counselor Zaius wants to keep them around. They kind of have like old human technology, like these little grenades that when someone throws it in the courtroom to show that it explodes.
Wasn't that weird though that he just has that like on his shelf? That'd be like right now in this room, I just have like live grenades on my shelf. I'm like, well, they're from World War II, so
but the thing
I like them.
There are definitely people who do have that.
I guess it just seems insane, doesn't it?
Oh well, it's definitely insane. It's not a safe thing to do.
Right. Okay. Well, sorry, people who have live grenades in their house.
I feel like there's just someone who's like, this is a grenade from my grandfather got in World War II. And it just he doesn't know if it's on live or not. It's just sitting on a shelf somewhere.
Yeah. Anyways, they have them and they are able to show the point of showing the bomb is the sort of destruction that humans
can cause.
Yeah.
And Zaius' argument is like, we need to keep them around. We need to learn from them at least before we kill them because we need to know what they know. Like, we don't have their technology. And he's obviously experienced this before. What I kind of like, though, is the other counselors are just like, we just got to kill them. And they're even kind of like a little conniving about it. Like, they don't want to. Like, they see the description of power of the grenade. They're like, we can't let them live. And even sort of this post-trial, they're taking them back to their cages. And one of the ape counselors kind of like Game of Thrones it and takes the guard to the side. And he's just like, hey, kill them if they try to escape. And make sure they try to escape.
Yeah.
Like, this is just not like, let's like kill them if they try to escape.
I thought that was pretty good. I thought that was... I like the writing of that there was this layers beneath things. It's not just that they all believe humans are less than them. They know there's evidence out there that disagrees with their popular opinion, and so they're just trying to suppress it, which I thought was a much more interesting way of going about things.
Well, that's it. They want to suppress it. Zaius doesn't like it, but he wants to take advantage of it. Like there are viewpoints and layers even amongst these nameless apes on a council. Like we're seeing different layers, which is kind of cool for. I think, like we said earlier, a 74 show, which we at this point we assumed were all black and white.
Yeah.
Not like as far as color goes, but like morality.
Well, and can I mention one thing here, Luke? And I'm going to keep taking us off track. I don't know if this is a thing, but I sort of noticed, and it's not a positive thing, but does it not seem like all of the apes that are a little bit more open-minded and are a little bit more less warrior-like are light-skinned apes, and all of the very militaristic ones were dark-skinned ape? Am I not wrong?
You're not wrong. This actually comes up. I'll bring it up now, but it comes in the next episode. One of the because there are apes which are kind of the fair, or the blonder or fairer-skinned or longer-haired ones.
They look more like chimpanzees, and the other ones look a little bit more like gorillas.
And in the next episode, an ape will refer to one of the darker ones as a gorilla.
Right.
And he will even say, gorillas aren't great company. They don't care much for culture and art.
Right.
So they are even. I think that we're even seeing like factions within the ape society of like.
But is there some sort of maybe unseemly race comment here?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, it's not out of the question. I don't. It's tough to know. I mean, probably.
Yeah, it just was those things, you're watching halfway through and you're like, oh, I don't know. Like, because I'm kind of enjoying this, but do I feel weird about that,
Yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, I guess you could say the same. Like, it's like the gorillas play more like Klingons.
Right.
Like, are all the Klingons brown and not white? Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you maybe want to break that down on a cultural studies level, you're probably looking at like at least unconscious biases playing into choices in like color design for sure.
Right.
If not, I mean, I feel like those decisions aren't conscious, at least of the creators, because they seem to be at least a little more. They certainly are far on the liberal side of the show,
right?
For the time, certainly like in the Roddenberry camp for sure. But I think what we're seeing is those unconscious biases definitely just like exist, and like very like clearly to a modern day audience, like, oh, look at that.
Like it just kind of sticks out. But anyways, we've mentioned it now, so hopefully it won't become too much of a plot point going forward.
We can ask Kaveh about it. He can tell us all about it. What a tease for next week. We keep plugging this guest.
Yeah.
Anyway, Galen goes to visit them while they're in prison that night, and kind of he has a few more questions, and he's like kind of gaining sympathy for them. And Alan's kind of talking. I was like telling him like we need to get back to that ship. We need to get that magnetic disc so we can get that like basically flight recorder back. And they proposition Galen. They're like, hey, you get us out of here, we'll take you back to the past with us. What do you think about that? You like humans? Come on back to the past.
Right.
Which what I liked is Galen's just like, nah, that's treason. Like, nah, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not going on that much of a limb for you right here.
Yeah.
But it's kind of at this moment he leaves, and the guard comes and delivers some food to them, which is just like a salad, and they're disgusted.
Yeah, they're disgusted because it's a salad. I did love that.
Like they just put it down; it just looks like a bowl of salad.
And what's great is he leaves the thing and clearly closes the door, but clearly doesn't lock it.
Yeah, he leaves it
open.
open.
And Pete is throwing such a hissy fit because he's like, "I'm still hungry." And then the way he finds out that the door is unlocked, he literally goes to the door and bangs on it, saying he's hungry, like he's a toddler, and the door opens.
Need some real meat in here.
Yeah, like this is salad, this is rabbit food.
But yeah, they find out the door's open, and then they're like, "Oh, you think it's a trap?" And I think Alan's like, "Absolutely. Should we still do it?" They're like, "Absolutely."
Yeah, I like that. They were just like they just yes and that scene big time.
And they're like, "Trap? Yes. Should we go? Yes."
Yeah.
And Galen's kind of leaving the compound. He kind of sees the ape guard sort of setting up behind a bush, like clearly with his gun drawn. Basically, Galen's like, that's really suspicious. I wonder what's happening with the prisoners. And at that moment, they sort of walk out of the prison, and this guy like goes to take a shot at them, and Galen kind of steps in and like fights the guard, being like, "Hey, don't kill them." Blah blah blah.
It's the moment he sort of commits to being on the other side.
Yeah, he tries to save them altruistically, but in the result of stopping this ape, he accidentally, or this gorilla guard, he kills the gorilla.
Yeah.
So basically now the humans run off, and Galen basically, oops, looks like you're a murderer.
Yeah.
So they're basically like, listen, you're going to be hung for murder and treason now, Galen. And Zayas does try to intervene temporarily to like, and he's trying to tell Zayas, he's like, hey, it was all a conspiracy. They were trying to kill them anyway. Like, this isn't my fault. I tried to do the right thing. But because he had that human book on him, which is contraband, Zayas is like, I can't help you. Like, you stepped too far. Like, you had that book with you. I can't politically save you anymore. And like, that's theoretically where Galen's left, being put in the prison as well. But of course, our human compatriots, seeing him get drug off, they're also altruistic. They want to pay it forward, they say.
Yeah.
They're always saying pay it forward.
I don't think it's this scene. I think it's the earlier scene where they get the two guys are tied up. But it had one of my favorite things was they escape the rope by just rubbing it on a rock.
Yeah, classic.
It's just like, how long would that take to work?
A long time. Your wrist would be so raw.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, after they've escaped, they know Galen's in prison. They decide they're gonna they get directions from some human to Counselor Zayas' house. They're basically gonna try to I don't know if they're there to reason with him or not. When they arrive, they do find this grenade on his shelf. They find another grenade on his shelf, and they kind of have a brief confrontation with him. And Counselor Zayas basically lays out why humans are an infection, like why they can't be allowed to run around. But basically that you guys had your shot and you destroyed each other. Like, we don't like you, but for good reason.
Yeah, he makes a pretty well-reasoned argument against humans.
And he even says that he's just like, I had to kill the last human who came, the last human from your timeline, which is a good question. I don't know enough about the chronology of this series, but I guess Heston was murdered at some point.
Yeah,
because it's not at the end of the first one, because he's yelling, he's like, "You blew it up." You blew it up, you bastards. So he's not dead then. I'm interested. I'm very curious.
Also, I guess a lot of people have that same turbulence accident going into, where were they going? Alpha Centauri?
Alpha Centauri. It's a real problem.
You make a left and you're supposed to go right.
Oh, I just ended back on that Planet of the Apes.
Turbulence was right to 3,000 and something.
I think we'll find out some more information about that in the coming episodes. See how common it is.
I'm going to say this now, not having watched any of the future episodes. I'm going to guess at least one of the episodes, another human is going to come from the past.
Oh, I like this prediction.
Yeah.
This is good. We'll see if it comes true. Getting back to Zaius, they basically use the grenade to hold him hostage, and they take him to the prison and force him to like demand the release of Galen. They lock Zaius in the garden in a cell, and they can't get Galen out because they can't find a key to the door. I only mention this because I really enjoyed this exchange of dialogue because they've still got that grenade and they can't get through the door, and they're banging the door and they're like, Galen, go to the back of your cell. And he's like, why? Never mind why. That's what they yell at him. They yell, never mind why, and then drop a
blow
grenade.
it up the door. Yeah. Anyways, they blow up the door in very like 1970s kind of explosion. And
I went back and watched it again because it's not bad, but they definitely lock the camera off, set the explosion off, and then put another door, like the blown up door there. It's not quite seamless, but like I'm like, that's actually not a bad pull.
So they blow up the door. Galen goes out with them. Where do they run to next?
They basically head back to the ship because they grab a metallic disc because this is going to be the MacGuffin of the series. Apparently, it's like maybe if they can find an advanced enough human society who still exists on Earth, they can get them to read this disc, and Alan and Pete can find a way to go home.
Right.
Like,
it is, to be fair, it's a very tenuous plan to get home because Pete, as I said, is a real downer, and I don't know if it's this episode or the next episode, but he points out, he's like, so not only does this disc have to work, we need to find an advanced people who can read it. Also have built a computer, which we don't have in this world, then hoping that what the information is something that would help us, then that we can build a ship that using that information, and we can still then using all those together to get home. And it's like, it's never going to happen. So while I find him a downer, I was like, you're all right, Pete.
Well, I don't mind Pete. I feel like he's just doing it to keep Alan happy. He just feels bad for Alan.
Yeah.
He misses his kids.
Yeah, poor Alan.
One thing I did like, though, is they grab that and they kind of take off, and it kind of sets up the idea that these two astronauts and Galen are going to be like, you know, they're the fugitive. They're the fugitive now in Planet of the Apes. But the apes ride up right after they're leaving, and they like destroy the spaceship to cover it up. And I was just like, guys, you want that human technology? Reverse engineer it, baby. Don't blow up that ship.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why you're never gonna get ahead, apes.
Yeah, apes. Well, and they really did tear it apart. There was wires everywhere.
Yeah, they messed it up.
It literally looked like apes had got in there. You know?
Very good. All right, let's move on to episode 2.
Yeah. What was the title to number 2? Because the first one had a great title.
Here we go. Summary for episode 2: The Gladiators.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
In your time, did all humans feel this way about killing?
Depended on the war. There were some who wouldn't kill for any reason. Pacifists. They figured human life was just too special.
Do you understand this?
I've never understood the need to kill. It's a thing for humans.
Burke and Verdun are faced with having to fight to the death when captured, and the ape prefect amuses himself by staging gladiatorial-style fights between the humans in his charge. This was courtesy of Ape Fan.
Oh, he didn't have a number?
Just Ape Fan.
Wasn't Ape Fan number 13 or something?
He got there first.
There's something we find out right off in this episode is that this show is going to be somewhat serialized.
Yeah.
That this takes place pretty much directly after the last episode, and the thread is that this is now the trio. This is the team that are going to go from adventure to adventure.
Yeah, we sort of start off briefly in Central City. That Gorilla Urka, who is with Zaius, the sort of military leader, is kind of like his right hand, who would rather kill the humans than like study them. He's looking at a huge map of basically the western side of the United States. Like it's California, probably a little BC, a little bit of Mexico in there, but nothing sort of east of that and nothing further west across the ocean. But they're sort of like basically tracking down potential villages they could be at. And he's sending out one of his ape underlings to track them down. Did you catch the name of this ape he's sending out?
No, but I tell you what I did catch is the name of the fruit they eat. Well, if that's worth anything.
We're coming soon, but I only note this ape because he's like, all right, you need to go out there, Jason, and track them down.
No, they didn't. His name was Jason?
The ape's name was Jason.
So you got Zaius, Urko, Galen, and Jason.
Just me, Jason.
Jason, the name that every time I go into a new office, someone calls me Jason, and I never correct them. The name I should have had was Jason.
That ape's name wasn't Jason at all.
No, it was Jordan.
That ape was just your job in the future.
Yeah.
Anyway, he sort of, Urko tells Jason, hey, go track him down, kill them if they try to escape, and don't forget, make sure they try to escape. Like, This is still like very much, it's like Urko is trying to follow Zaius' orders, but he's also like, kill them.
Unrelated. What do you think the climate is like in the world right now? Because it seems pretty warm, but the apes are wearing a lot of clothing.
Yeah, it seems pretty temperate.
Because the guys, I think you noticed that the two leads are constantly sweating on the show. And like almost to the point where I'm like, did you guys add extra sweat to these guys? Because they're constantly sweating. So I'm assuming it's hot. But like those people, the poor people in those suits, because they're wearing a monkey suit and like clothing and then like armor on top of it. I was like, oh man, it must be brutal.
Oh man, 100%. The people in those ape suits must be sweating so much. Yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe they figured out a good ventilation system after 5 movies.
Yeah, maybe.
We catch up with Galen, Alan, and Pete, and they've kind of just been wandering around. They're discussing their MacGuffin of this disc, and this is where they come across their fruit.
Which we didn't mention in the first episode, and I know I've said this before. I love futuristic food.
This is good stuff, too.
And this is good. Like, so the last, I think this is a little bit different. In the first episode, I don't know if I caught the name of it, but it sort of looked like a papaya with like weird colored balls on top of it.
Right.
And this one, I did catch it. It's called an oper.
An oper.
And it looks a little bit like, I think they said it looks like a mango, tasted like an orange. Was that right?
It tastes like an orange, but has the mouthfeel of a banana.
Right.
Which is crazy.
The mouthfeel.
Well, I assume they say the feel of a banana.
What's the mouthfeel of that?
They say the feel of a banana, but I'm like, you must be referring to the mouthfeel of a banana.
But and it looked pretty good, and I hope they just keep throwing
crazy fruit.
I love that idea though, that it's now thousands of years in the future from when we're living now.
After some nuclear apocalypse.
Of course different things would be growing. And I think that's great.
No, it was very cool. Like it kind of looks a bit like an orange, but it's got like or
they peel
mango,
it weirdly.
But it's got like weird green stripes down the side or something. It's very cool. But while they're sort of out here wandering, eating fruit, they stumble.
That's funny.
They stumble across these two men, and they're fighting. They're
I loved
fighting
it.
each other, and they sort of.
The one guy has very impressive arms.
Well, we'll come to learn they're like a father-son, but like the father is huge, and I don't know. I thought he should be played by Kurt Russell.
Oh, that's a really good casting.
He had a Kurt Russell face.
Yeah. So the funny thing about what I loved about the fight is, so the scene is you see two humans fighting. Pete runs in. I think he's the more
he's old. He's younger, a little more gun ho.
Yeah. So he's like, I'm going to save these guys. And when he goes to the fight, he realizes, no, they're like training, and so they both start fighting him. But his move to get into the fight is a drop kick. And then Alan has to join the fight because now they're teaming up on Pete, and his move is just like you'd see something in like professional wrestling. He just jumps like a flying bat and like hits them with his stomach. And I was like, what are these moves these guys have? But the fight choreography is at least very interesting. Like they're doing a lot of really odd fights, and it's going to go through this episode. There's a lot of people flipping and stuff, and I was like, this is pretty good fight choreography. Like it's fun watch. Yeah.
I mean, it's long shots of it, long takes. Yeah. They're really doing the stunts. It's not bad.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I guess that's what happened. What I was when I was watching it, I'm just like, oh, Pete's running in there, I guess, to stop them, and now he's fighting one of them, and now Alan's running in to fight them too. Like I'm like, you guys, like there was a million other solutions before run in and fight these two men who you see fighting on the side of the road. But anyway, it's just so Alan can drop his disc.
Classic astronauts.
Astronaut? Well, he should not have dropped his little.
Oh, well
disc.
Done. Well done.
He drops his little magnetic disc, and they run off when an ape on a horse rides up. And this ape, he runs the local human colony. His name is he's the prefect. Sorry, where is his name here? I've got it written down. His name is Prefect Barlow. He rides up, and like they tell him, it's like, hey, these two weird humans ran out of the bushes and attacked us for no reason.
They come to a scene very soon after this because basically Galen starts ingratiating himself with this guy.
It's because Barlow, after the fight, Barlow finds the disc that they dropped, and they watch Barlow right away, and they're like, oh, we got to get the disc. Galen's like, hey, I'm an ape. I'll go talk to him. No problem. So we basically cut to his village, and Galen goes in to kind of like win him over.
And he does a pretty good job, and he starts befriending the guy. But what I liked is they just start drinking at one point. And it was very reminiscent of the scene from Planet Earth. And I thought the scene was going to be that Galen was just going to get him drunk and then take advantage of him.
Well, it wouldn't have been hard. That ape, Barlow, he's so lonely. Like he's going on and on about how lonely he is in this conversation.
Yeah, Galen knocked on the exact wrong door. Like he's just like, I'll befriend this guy. And it's like, man, did that guy want to befriend?
It is kind of like, it's like the idea of if you had an elderly neighbor and you went and knocked on his door for one time, and you're like, hey, how you doing? And then he was just like, oh, you got to come in. You got to see my collection of metal I found.
Right.
Because that's kind of what happened. They're showing him around. Galen sort of gives this thing. He's like, oh, I'm like an anthropologist who's out here looking for artifacts from old civilizations. He's like, oh, well, you got to see my old artifacts. He's like, check out this golf club. But
Yeah.
he doesn't know what it is.
He thinks it's a weapon.
He thinks it's a weapon.
Yeah.
And he, in his idea of history, he thinks this is from a past society of apes who were very good at metalworking, but like weren't like technologically advanced to survive. But they like in their world, they're like, we've lost this ability, but we had it at some point. And Galen tries to be like, hey, why don't you show me that little metal disc? And he's like, oh, this is an artifact. Look how new it is. It couldn't possibly be an artifact.
Yeah, there's a lot of him like trying to grab things and then getting caught and like, ooh, ooh, ooh.
Like, holding it. It's like, oh, this one? Oh no, you don't see it. And putting it in a box.
Yeah, exactly.
Again,
Yeah.
like, ooh. But it's kind of a nice scene where they get to know each other, and Barlow talks about his theories about humans. He's just like, I like his one theory. He's like, he figures. Barlow says, if you stuck 50 humans in a room with some paint, in about a year's time, they could probably duplicate all of all the ape masterpieces.
Yeah,
like that 100 monkeys in a room kind of thing. But we kind of get into that. There's a bit of conversation about ape society and like what it's like there and what humans are like, and he just can't get this artifact from him. And all the old man seems to be doing, Barlow's just like using this guy who's talking to him as leverage to like cure his own loneliness, basically. While they're doing that, I don't know why. Maybe you can explain it to me. Instead of waiting for Galen,
they steal horses
to do what he's supposed to do. They're like, hey, while we're waiting, let's go knock that guy out and steal their horses.
There's no reason for it. It just sets the action up. But yeah, it basically sets them up, them getting put in prison again.
Immediately captured.
Like, it's just like, that's 2 episodes in a row, guys. Like, we need to keep a count of how many times these guys are going to get captured.
Thrown in a prison cell.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know why they stole horses.
It was so unhelpful.
I think they were just like, we would like horses.
Well, they kind of said like, well, if he gets in trouble, we'll need a quick getaway. But it did seem like he really stepped way over the line.
But we get into the point where we start finding a little bit more about the gladiator and his son. And what we basically find out is that the gladiator is training his son, but sort of delaying his son having to fight in this gladiator arena because he doesn't really want him to.
Yeah, because it's fights to the death. And this is something Barlow's come up with himself, is to keep his humans docile. He holds the games, he calls them.
And I wanted to mention, I was watching this like, man, how many times have I seen a gladiator fight in a science fiction? And so I looked it up, and this is a subtrope of the larger trope called involuntary battle to the death.
Oh.
And along with the various versions of this trope are blood sport, deadly game, deadly graduation, duel to the death, finish him, forced prize fight, and then gladiator games. Yeah.
Wow. There's a lot of tropes in there.
Yeah.
That's pretty good, though. That's a good definitive list.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised. I don't think we've come across that trope yet. This will be the first time, I think.
Haven't we had someone being forced to fight?
Oh, I guess no, they weren't forced
in
to
Harsh
fight,
Realm.
though.
In Harsh Realm, did anyone get forced to fight Street Fight or anything like that?
No, they dropped by those zip file fights.
That's true.
But none of our leads
but
were.
you've seen this before in science
100%.
fiction thing. Yeah.
This is like.
Well, this is almost classic. I was gonna say classic Star Trek of like, they're in Rome now.
Well, I was gonna say Planet Earth kind of had it, but they weren't forced to fight. They did have a fight sequence similar to this, though.
Right.
Well, the two ladies fought.
That's true. Yeah. I guess that would be.
But this wasn't forced to fight.
That was a finish him.
Finish him. At any rate, he's sort of showing us the games in the state and the big like stone arena takes place in. Fun fact about that arena, though.
Oh yeah.
The only remaining standing set from the original Planet of the Apes movies.
Really?
The original movie that was in it, and they'd used it again in Beneath the Planet of the Apes, I guess, and used it here. But it was the only remaining standing set from the original film.
What I like about this scene is you get to see. Did we ever get a name for Gladiator guy?
I just called him Dad.
Yeah.
I think we did, but I didn't.
I love that sitcom Gladiator Dad.
Gladiator Dad.
He comes out wearing the most fur I've ever seen a human wearing.
Oh, it's great. Like, here's the thing: is he says this, humans are violent by nature. I give them these fights where someone dies, and it like fulfills that bloodlust, and it keeps them more docile, and makes my community easier to run as a prefect. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, "Oh, sorry, Galen, just 1 second. I need to get the game started." And he stands up and he like wrestling MCs intros these guys. And when Gladiator Dad comes out, yeah, he's like full wrestler. He's like, he's cheering the audience on. He's like, he's getting them hyped up. It's great. And then the fight kicks off. And I think it's very much like wrestling. There's a lot of like, someone gets dropped on a knee. There's like someone gets kicked in the neck at some point.
Well, so what we find out is, of course, the two guys who are captured, Alan and Pete, are now going to have to be gladiator fighters, and Pete is called, and he has to fight this.
Yes.
He doesn't even get to start at the bottom like you'd think. He's got to fight the big guy.
He's got to fight the champion, the all-time ruling champion.
And even though he gets baned at one point, he gets his back essentially broken like 3 times in a row. But there's some pretty good fights. And also, when did the astronauts learn to fight so well?
Well, that's the thing. When you see Gladiator Dad, which you will on the social media, he's huge.
Yeah.
Just huge. There's no way Pete stood a chance.
Yeah, the guy's twice the size of him. But anyway, it's a fight, and somehow Pete actually wins.
Pete gets the upper hand, kind of knocks Wrestler Dad to the ground.
But won't kill him.
Well, that's it. As soon as he's knocked sort of Wrestler Dad out, the crowd just starts chanting, sword, sword,
Yeah.
sword, sword, sword. And like Prefect Barlow throws a sword into the ring. And that's, I guess, the cue to kill him.
Yeah, and as someone who's been to local wrestling, unfortunately, that's very much like a local wrestling crowd. Just everyone somehow knowing with the same thing to chant.
Sword.
Yeah, sword. That's what I'm going to do next time. Sword. Maybe they'll throw a sword in
Throw a sword in there. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. But yeah, Pete won't use a sword because he's an enlightened human being. He would never kill another human being. And I kind of like this too because he won't do it. And he throws the sword down, and the humans in the gladiator ring, they just start to riot.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of like your sport team in whatever the final, it's the NBA finals or the NHL finals. They have lost, so it's like we're burning the city down.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
what happens.
They're just like, this is unbelievable that you wouldn't kill this man for us, for our entertainment.
Yeah.
And it's kind of great because the riot breaks out. Galen and Pete kind of use that chance to escape. Jason, the gorilla, shows up in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And he's just like, what is going on here? Like, all these humans are rioting. And they kind of wraps up. We go to a commercial break, and when we come back, Pete and Galen have snuck off. They kind of sneak back to the dad and son's house. And the son's taking care of the dad, he's injured, but he's more depressed.
He's very emotionally damaged from having lost the fight. I think partially because he's embarrassed and partially just I don't know.
He's humiliated because he wasn't killed. Like
Right.
that was what's supposed to happen. He's supposed to die in battle.
And he has, this actor, he's giving it, but there's a scene where he just, I think I've shown it to you, Luke. He just sort of like looks off to the camera like sad, and then he just walks off stage. And it's just a glorious piece of acting.
Everyone is honestly doing a great job. They're chewing the scenery in all the right ways.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. But basically, Pete and Galen show up, and they're like, hey, we need your help. Alan's still in that prison. We need to get him out. You got to help us. And the son's just like, hey, my mom was a pacifist. I love that you didn't kill my dad. Like, maybe we can work something out. Like, I like your style.
You get a lot of this through this episode. There's a real sort of light discussion on pacifism.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually know where this show lands. I think it does sort of
lean
lean a little more
toward
left,
it.
but it is sort of like threaded throughout the show.
Yeah. I mean, the idea that his mom was a pacifist, but she married this gladiator, and like the dad's training him to be a gladiator, but even the dad seems reluctant to put him in the ring. But when, the son's like, I'm going to, help these guys, the dad's pretty upset about, like, there's a whole family drama tension that not super important, but runs throughout the episode. And both actors do a good job with it. Prefect Barlow, meanwhile, is just getting chewed out by Jason.
Yeah.
Jason's just like, hey, they've quelled this human riot, but he didn't execute a single one of the humans while they quelled the riot. He's like, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to kill the humans if they get out of line. And Galen's like, not Galen, Barlow's kind of telling him, hey, no, I invented these games. It's a much better effective method. Like the way I run things is cost effective. And Jason's kind of like, well, when I get back to the city, I'm ratting you out for being soft, and you're going to lose all of this. But while he's sort of saying that, he's just like, oh, wait, those games you mentioned, you say you kill people in them? He's like, that gives me an idea. And he basically is just like, why don't we do another one and toss old Alan in there, so at least I'll kill one of these prisoners. Yeah. Which an easier way would be to just kill the prisoner.
Yeah.
But hey, we won't get a gladiator battle.
It's much more cinematic and dramatic this way.
It's true. And he can't do it on face value. It's all about subterfuge. Which, leads Barlow to drop by the dad's place, and he's like, tells the son, hey, you got to go out. We're going to do another fight tonight. Your dad's out of commission, so it's up to you. You got to kill your first man tonight. And the son's just like, hey, no way. I don't believe in killing people. It's not my way anymore. And basically Barlow's like, well, that's against the law. I'm throwing you in prison with the prisoner. Yeah. So now the dad kind of has a reason to break his son out, and as a result, Alan. So he kind of teams up with Pete and
they get a great sneak attack.
It is good. The dad comes up and like, it's kind of nice. He's pleading with the apes to like give him a chance to see his son, and the apes are kind of like it seems like the apes and humans in this particular enclave are closer to equal. At least they have empathy for each other. But he uses that empathy for Galen and Pete to jump off a roof onto their backs.
Yeah, right on top of them. Take the guys out. Everyone escapes.
Yeah, they stage a big prison break. They're running out of town. Jason runs out with Gorilla Jason runs out with a gun and takes aim and ends up shooting the dad.
Yeah, of course.
But the dad cannot be killed with a single bullet.
No, he sort of Samsons them and makes sure to get in a fight with Jason and basically kills Jason and with his dying breath.
Yeah, he like kills Jason with dying breath, and the guys manage to escape, and basically they're sort of left with Barlow sort of rides out after them as they're sort of escaping out of the place, and they kind of have this moment where like Barlow's like, "Hey, listen, I think I've learned something. No more games. Like I think I agree. Like this whole killing thing's not great. I was really worried I was going to lose my prefecture, but Jason's dead now, so I'm going to cover up this whole thing. You were never here. This never happened. Like you're good to go." And the son doesn't go back to town. He's like, I'm going to go kind of spread the gospel of pacifism around the world. And then like kind of, end of the show there, our heroes sort of ride off into the sunset. But it wasn't a bad ending. Like
I did think that was one of the weaker things. They basically have the villain. Well, I guess he's the villain, Barlow. He's basically like, oh, and here's your Gizmo thing back.
Yeah.
Like why? It's just because they need to have back to this, like lose it the next episode.
Well,
again.
I didn't mind that Barlow ended up being, he was less a straight villain. Like he seemed to like humans a bit and have some respect for them, but he thought he had to kill them to like keep them in line, and he's met these other humans, and his mind has kind of changed. I don't know. It had some shades of gray. I didn't mind. It wasn't a perfect episode by any means, but I didn't hate it.
And there we are.
I mean, yeah, that wraps it up. Any final thoughts on these final 2 episodes?
I think my expectations were lower than maybe this show deserved, and because of that, I think I'm maybe enjoying this more than, I don't know if I'm enjoying this more than it deserves or just in comparison to other things, but I had a pretty good time watching these 2 episodes.
Yeah, I agree. I was genuinely surprised. I mean, there's some goofy effects still, like the masks aren't perfect, but overall, like, and the set design is a little par for the course for this kind of show. And because it's like set in like a agricultural society, it's not like a lot of stuff to see. But I think the writing is surprisingly better than I expected.
That's what it is. I think what it really comes down to is these scripts feel like they went through a couple drafts.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As opposed to some of the things we've seen are just like, why did that happen? I don't know. The weather. That's why. And you're like, what? And there's very little of that in this show.
The actors even seem to care a lot more. Even the ape actors. Everyone seems to be putting a lot more effort into it. Even this father-son one-off team, like, they were both good. They were both in it. They were selling the scenes they were in. I was surprised. I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. So what are you going to give the first episode?
I'm going to give the first episode, I liked it. It's fun. It's a little perfunctory because it's a lot of like, I like that they got through it quickly. Like we didn't spend a lot of time for them to like, oh no, this is Earth. Like they kind of get to it pretty quickly, but there's still a lot of like setup and it's not perfect. I don't know. I'm going to conservatively give it a 6. I think the show can do better, but it's still like a okay kickoff to it. It's just a lot of stuff we already know about Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, going into it, for me, not having known as much as you did, I'm going to give it a 7 because I think I agree with you. All the sort of like, yes, it's a pilot and they're getting through a lot of stuff, but I was pleasantly surprised with pretty much every aspect of it. So, yeah, 7.
Yeah. What about next episode?
I'm gonna give it the exact same, even though I don't know in retrospect whether I'll like these the same, but I'm also gonna give it a 7. I kind of felt the same about it. It had some problems, but I was like, yeah, it's a fun kind of silly episode where it's a gladiator. Now, on the surface, I don't know how great a plot it was, but I don't know. I'm still in a good mood. We'll see where my scores go. I want to leave enough room for me to go up and down, but I'm gonna give this another one a 7.
Okay. I mean, I think in some ways we're going to do something very similar. I enjoyed the episode. I think coming off number 2 into like just such a cliched gladiator episode was like, that was not great. Like that was real run of the mill in some ways of like, here's the next plot. They have to fight in gladiator arena. The writing was much better than like it deserved to be. Like this plot was much better written than it absolutely should have been. But it was still, I'm going to give it a 4.5. I think it's just
wow.
I think because it's just a little below average.
You felt it was too handcuffed by the actual structure of the gladiators.
Yeah, I felt like this was just like it felt like a form letter plot. They're like, now you do a gladiator episode. That someone got the assignment and like really busted his ass
right
to make it work, but he was still stuck in that assignment. So I'm going to give it a 4.5. I have.
I don't
hopes, though.
disagree with you, but I'm surprised how low the score is.
I have hopes that. Here's the thing: is I think both of these the show can do better, and I am expecting it potentially to do better.
I would agree with you. So there we are. That's the first 2 episodes. I think this is the most optimistic I felt in a little while. I mean, Man and Machine, man, that was a real drag.
Yeah, we took some punches on the gut on that one. This one certainly feels like, we'll see if it can sustain. I'm hoping it can. I mean, right so far, I think the writing shows that there's potential. So,
yeah,
I mean, it's nice to see that at least.
And next week, I'm sure we're going to get a lot of information.
Oh, yeah, we're going to get a huge information dump with next week's guest. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
In the meantime, you can reach out to us on email if you want to talk to us about Planet of the Apes. We're at continuumdrag@gmail.com. And we'll have, a bunch of videos and photos and stuff from Planet of the Apes on Instagram and Twitter at continuumdrag. But that wraps it up. So, listener, thanks for joining us. And Jordan, I'll see you next week.
Forgot to mention one of my favorite lines. Why should truth be against the law? I was like, that was great.
Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario. Theme music by James Ruxsiedler. Produced by Jordan Delic and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Yunes, Adam Wheatner, Jeff Hanley, Jane McRae, and Stephen Packard.